Hey, what's up? This is Jason Bittner from Shadows Fall in Category 7, and you are watching Richard Metal Fan.
Hey, what's up, guys? Episode 312 of Richard Metal Fan Interviews, calling from Zoom, and I'm here with Jason Bittner. Bittner plays drums for Category 7 and also Shadow's goddamn motherfucking fall. So, how are you doing today, Jason?
Not bad. How are you?
Doing pretty well. It's a great afternoon. I'm ready to interview you. We've been wanting to do this for a while now, and now it's finally happening.
Trying to get those studio ceiling lights out of the glare out of the way there.
But it's so great to have you here, man. So, kind of what I want to talk about is your musical history and sort of do a rundown of your discography. But take me back to young Jason Bittner. So, growing
Yeah, we
up,
tried to we tried to hook this up in Atlanta years ago, didn't we?
I think it was like last year. But I
Uh,
guess thing like timing and stuff didn't work out.
yeah. I know it was on an Overkill tour.
Yeah, definitely. But kind of what I want to talk about is your musical history and sort of do a rundown of your discography. So, take me back to young Jason Bittner. So, growing up, what were the first bands that got you into metal? What made you want to start playing drums?
The bands that got me into metal, the band that got me into heavy metal, technically, is Iron Maiden.
Yeah, my
Um,
favorite band of all time.
that was Maiden's my favorite metal band of all time as well. That was the
Me
first
too.
first band I saw of that genre in 1980, the day that MTV came on the air. I was 10 years old and I was like, what in God's name is this? And that just, sent me on my trajectory, Maiden and Priest. But then once when did I get Ride the Lightning? I want to say I think 84. A friend of mine let me borrow a record. He's like, "Oh, you got to check out this band." And I'm like, "Who's Metallica?" He goes, "No, it's pronounced Metallica, man." I'm like, "All right, cool, Metallica." And I took it home and I hated it. I was like, "Oh God, what the hell is this?" I'm like, because I was like used to Bruce Dickinson and Halford, and all of a sudden, James Hetfield. I'm like, what on earth is this? And like maybe like a week later I was doing so I taped the album just in case I might like it one day. Gave the record back to my friend, and like a week later I'm like doing my paper out and I was humming like nah, 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 nah. I'm like, what is this that I'm singing to myself? And it was the riff from Fight Fire with Fire. And I'm like, oh, that's that Metallica band. I didn't think I liked that. And that was just like that started that. And not everyone, but a lot of the heavier bands, even bands I've been in, when I've heard the first time I didn't care for. Like Slayer, hated Slayer at first. I'm like, no way I'm gonna like this. Slayer's my favorite thrash band of all time. Anthrax and Megadeth were the only two that when on first listen, I wasn't like, oh, like Anthrax, I was just like, holy shit. Like that was like no pun intended, the be all end all for me right there. Because Charlie was like, I'm really kind of fast forwarding, but Charlie was like one step beyond Lombardo for me at that point because like Lombardo was feet, but Charlie was the whole fucking package. So, but like even like down the line, like bands I've been in, like I played in a band Stigmata. I didn't really like the singer at first. When I first heard it, I just thought it was abrasive, but becomes something I came to love. So back to the initial question. So I was introduced to Metallica first, then Megadeth second, because there was a kid I went to school with, and he was like, "Hey, there's this dude that was in Metallica before Kirk Hammett," because I didn't know anything existed. Like I didn't know about the No Life to Leather demos, and I didn't know about anything pre Kill 'Em All. So I was like, Kirk Hammett's the guitar player. He's like, no, this dude was in the band before him, and he's got this other band. And it's called Megadeth, and I was like, oh, all right. Um, and the first thing I heard was Killing Is My Business, but that was so raw at the time. I was like, all right, it's kind of cool, it's fast and stuff, but like I didn't really like once Peace Cells came out, I was like, oh, all right, now I get it. Production was way better, everything else that came along with that. Um, Maybe a year after that, or like within that year, got into Slayer. A friend of mine had Show No Mercy, and he had let me hear that, and I wasn't really that impressed. But then Rain and Blood came out like maybe like a couple weeks after he let me borrow Show No Mercy, and I bought that. Went on like spring break vacation, like my sophomore year of high school, to Florida with my mom. And all I did was just, I had Rain and Blood in my Walkman. That's dating it because it was 1985
Yeah.
in my Walkman on auto reverse. And that album was only 32 minutes long. I listened to that record just incessantly for a week straight. And just like the whole entire time going, oh, I can't wait to get on my drums. I want to play these songs because in my head, I knew all the drum parts, knew everything, had no fucking clue how hard thrash metal drumming was and playing that fast was, because like I said, I was, in the Maiden Judas Priest camp still, like jumping on the kit and trying to play Angel of Death at 15 years old. I was like, oh my God, this is a lot harder than it sounds. So it was Slayer, then Anthrax. It was basically through the big four. And then, everything else under the sun. Over the course of my life, I've tended to like the B and C level bands, like a lot, like as in like favorites, like over some of the bigger bands. Like if you said, I mean, for example, if you asked me if you could only pick one, if it was either Megadeth or Flotsam, what would you pick? I'd pick Flotsam. Like if you couldn't listen to, if you could only listen to one and you're not allowed to listen to another one, the other one again, I would pick Flotsam.
Yeah.
So, and not because I was in the band, that was a love of that band for decades before I was even in it.
Yeah, I
Like
agree.
another
Like
one,
Flotsam and Jet,
Rothschild America is
that
one of
Doomsday for
my,
the Deceiver is a great album.
yes, it is. Another one is like Rothschild America, one of my absolutely all-time favorite bands. Um, but anyway,
Yeah.
so that was the trajectory into that. And then, in the 90s, I've always been and I've always said this, I've always been a thrash metal drummer. I'm not an extreme metal drummer. I like that stuff, but I can't blast at 240, 260, that stuff. It's out of my wheelhouse. It's not what I do. But I like a lot of those drummers and went through that whole phase, like in the mid 90s, of just like, like immersed into Death and Morbid Angel and that stuff, and listening to Pete Sandoval and Sean Reinert and Gene Hoglan. So, my influences go across the board, really.
Yeah.
And let's not forget Van Halen either. So
Totally. And kind of like diving into it, I believe your first band was Suspended Animation, which then became Fear itself. Like tell me about that, because I don't think nobody ever talks about them.
nobody does, because if you don't live in this area, no one knows those bands. Um, when I left Berkeley and came home in the late 80s, I was just like, all right, I'm just going to start my own band, because that's just the way it's going to be. I couldn't find anything. So if you can't find a band, just fucking start one. So that's back in the days of, we had, multiple music stores, and we, put the bulletin board on the ad, or, the ad on the bulletin board, and, with the little tags, and hope someone, drummer looking for band, or guitar player wanted. So I put an ad up. I had listed the bands that, influenced by, probably the big four bands and blah, 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 blah. And I found this guitar player who lived about an hour away from where I live. And he was just he was a character. Let's just put it that way. He was an interesting guy. But he was a great guitar player. So me and him started writing songs. It was a combination of songs that I had written either at Berkeley or once I got home, because I play guitar too. But this isn't like, I'm no virtuoso musician. This is like, okay, here's the riff, but in my head, I hear it 30 BPMs faster than it is. I just can't go. I can go. Now play it a lot faster. So it was either songs that I wrote, or songs he wrote, or songs we wrote together. We had another one of my friends play rhythm guitar. We went through a couple different bass players before we got a kid that I was in college music school with at the time. Ironically enough, see, this is the funny thing. This is the funniest thing about Suspended Animation.
Yeah.
Suspended Animation singer, his favorite band was the band that I just quit a few months back.
Oh wow.
His favorite band was Overkill, and his favorite singer in the world was Bobby Blitz.
Yeah.
This guy, now here's the thing. For 30 some odd years, I used to think that he sounded just like Blitz. Now that I've been in Overkill and listened to the actual real Blitz for 7 years in my monitors, there's a difference. But he's definitely, if you said this guy could this guy sing an Overkill cover band, you'd go, oh, absolutely. You might not even know the difference. So anyways, his favorite band was Overkill. We used to cover 3 Overkill songs. We used to play, and ironically, one of them I never even played in the real band. We used to play Time to Kill, Elimination, and we played Hammerhead. In the real band, I played Hammerhead and Elimination, but we never played Time to Kill. I asked Dee Dee for years. I'm like, why don't we play Time to Kill? Blitz doesn't want to play that one. I'm like, come on, it's a great song.
Yeah.
So, anyways, so we had a reputation, sadly. They're a great band, but the singer sounds too much like Overkill. They're never going to go anywhere. So I struggled with that for a couple years. Things started changing. The guitar player and I sort of had a falling out. He was sort of starting to go in a different direction musically. Like he wanted to play less thrash stuff, where I was starting to listen to Morbid Angel and Death, and I wanted to play even more, along that lines of music. So the band kind of fell apart. The bass player and I stayed together, and we got together with a friend of ours. Actually, this is very ironic because he lives right where you live, and he was at the show that you were at last year.
Oh no shit.
Yeah, this guy Rob Dwyer, and he was a guitar player that
Rob
we knew
Dwyer.
here, but like
I feel like that name sounds familiar.
he's in the local scene in Atlanta. He plays in bands down there and stuff too, but we had this band, Fear Itself. It was me, the bass player from Suspended Animation, him, and our singer was a guy named Malcolm Lovegrove. God rest his soul. He just passed last year. So we put this band together, and it was more along the lines going towards Slayer. Like that was the music we were writing was really good. I loved this band. I thought it was great. I was putting all my energy. Now that I'm starting to think about this, I've done this quite a lot in my life. I put a lot of energy into a project, and it fucking goes nowhere. So we played 2 great shows, and all of a sudden, like out of the blue, Rob had met this girl, and he's like, hey, I'm going to move in with this girl, and we're going to move to Atlanta, and blah, 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 blah. And he upped and left because he met a girl and they're moving to Atlanta. So for years, I was so pissed over this. I'm like, because you have to remember, I'm 55 now, so I can laugh about it. And Rob and I have mended the fences years ago. I see him every time I come to Atlanta. So, but at that point, when I was 23, I'm like, you're letting a chick come between the band and you? Like, so that was my mentality. But I can tell you now, 28, 30, whatever, I can't even add today. A lot of fucking years later, they're still together. God bless them. And that's the one thing that I go, he left because he knew this was the one. This was the one. He's still with her. They're still together. That's awesome.
Yeah, and
So
that's great.
it's okay that he killed the band. But basically, Rob moving to Atlanta killed Fear Itself. We just couldn't find it. There was really only one other guitar player that was in our area that was as good as he was, who wasn't in a band, but he just didn't want to be in a band at that point. So it was just like, all right. So again, so then for like the next year, I just kind of basically, I just say I was just fucking off, like around 90, 93 or so. I was just 92, 93. I was just jamming with some friends at home just for fun, just getting together, like working on some tunes. But I mean, I was still in the midst of pursuing other bands. And that's when I started playing a band called Symptom Hate,
Oh, nice.
which was basically a theatrical death metal band that wore corpse paint and had props and costumes and graveyard shit and all this stuff that's really fucking cool now, and it's been cool for like the last 15 years. But when we were doing it in '93, we were getting laughed at. Like no one got it, you know. And then like 10 years later, there's like I'm seeing all the Corpse Paint fans. I'm like, wait a minute, what? We were getting made fun of when we did this. But here's a funny story. So I'm playing in this sort of basically we were a death metal band. Really fast stuff, a lot of double bass, a couple blast beats here and there. Just starting to get into that kind of stuff. So I was preliminary with that. So I was just learning how to do it. At that time, I thought a blast beat was just both hands together. I didn't know that sometimes you can do them separately and all that. So, anyways, learning how to do that stuff, going in a heavier vein. The only thing but we had a limited shelf life in this area because like we had like diehard fans like who came to the shows, but for the most part, we wouldn't get shows because oh, well, they're going to bring all this shit in. They got to move their props in and their makeup's going to get all over the place and blah, blah, blah. But we did have one big show that was opening for the band I just quit like 3 or 4 months ago.
Yeah.
In 1995. No, 93. They were on Your Black.
Yeah. Very underrated Overkill album. Like nobody talks about that album.
I hate that record.
Yeah.
I hate that record. I told Didi that to his face. You know why? The reason why I hate that record, and he disagrees with me, but whatever.
Yeah, it's totally different sounding compared to like their
To
other
me,
albums.
it was just their version of the Black Album, and that's what every band was doing at that time, was chasing the Black Album and trying to make a record like that. So for me, I was like, where's the coma? You know, where's the stuff like that? So we opened for Overkill in 1993, and I had seen Blitz outside, and I go, hey man, would you check out my band tonight? You know, we're opening for you guys. Yeah, sure, kid. So I'm thinking he's never going to watch. So I look over like 3 songs in, and there's Blitz and Didi on the side of the stage watching the show. Blitz stayed the whole entire time, watched the whole band, which was something that when I first joined Overkill, he would talk about in interviews. He's like, yeah, I remember the first time, when he opened for Overkill in '93, he's tearing his giant drum set down with makeup running down his face. all the corpse paint coming off.
Yeah.
So, like I said, limited shelf life. About shortly into the beginning of 1994, I got asked to join Stigmata, which was basically the biggest band in this area. And that's really what I call my first real band.
Yeah.
Because
I know before that you had Burning Human. You did that Death is Mercy demo in '95. It's very raw sounding.
Stigmata still comes first. Stigmata comes first because Burning Human came out of Stigmata.
Oh. I thought it was like Stigmata was after Burning Human. Didn't know that.
Nope. I joined Stigmata technically really in the winter of '93. And going into '94, we started working on hold on. Here's the visual. We started working on that album right there.
Yeah.
That's Hymns for an Unknown God. That's the first album. The Death is Mercy demo for Burning Human actually is on that compilation,
Well,
right?
All right. I love how you have like your whole discography in the back.
That literally was just done over the course of this past summer. I've been wanting to do it for the longest time, but just between touring and just being in and out of the studio, and I needed to wait till my drums were out so I could access the wall and everything. So
Yeah.
I just finished about 2 weeks ago. So
Yeah.
there you go. So '94, I joined Stigmata. We did a bunch of showcasing for various labels. We almost got signed to Century Media. In '95, it was down to either us or Marauder, and they decided to pick Marauder instead of us.
Wow.
So in between '94 and '90, so in Burning Human came out of Stigmata in a way of it was Jay and I from Stigmata plus 2 of the guys who were our roadies at the time, Jonah and Hoops. They were, the other 2 guys in the band. So what would happen is Stigmata would play, those guys would stay, and then we'd have a Burning Human practice after Stigmata would be done. So Stigmata folded for a little while. I did a bunch of auditioning and potential auditioning, Typo, Mindfunk, Testament, Machine Head. Uh, that's it for Propane. So, and it was always a situation where I was always the second guy. I was always like, oh, we're gonna take this guy, we're gonna take him over you. If it wasn't him, it would be you. Like with Testament, they already had Deddy before I was gonna fly out for the audition. And Chuck told me, he goes, well, we pretty much think we're gonna take this guy, but if you want to come out, we'll still audition you. And I'm like, I'm not gonna go out. They already picked this guy. I'm not gonna spend $900 on a flight to San Francisco, for no reason. Propane, I lost out to Dave Shivari because they knew Dave better than they knew me. Typo, they already knew they were getting Johnny. So, anyways, a lot of hit and miss, hit and miss, hit and miss. And through that, Burning Human was still playing. And then in 96, I got the call to start working with Crisis on their album to be one of the 4 drummers that was going to be on their next record on Metal Blade. And then one of the drummers on the album was Roy Mayorga. While we were in the studio recording The Hollowing with all 4 drummers, Roy got the call from Max that he was going to be joining Soulfly. So at that point, then they asked me to be the live drummer. So let's wrap the next 3 years. 98, I did 97 to 98. I did 1 record with Crisis and then toured with them for that year. I left in the end of 98, went immediately back to Stigmata until 2000 when we finally called it a day. No, 2001 rather. Sorry.
Yeah. Didn't you also play with Everdark a little bit?
Hold on, we'll rewind in that. You dug deep on this, didn't you?
Yeah, you could give a shout out to Metal Archives for that for to this stuff. I was trying to dig
we'll go
deep.
back to Ever. We'll get back to Everdark. So actually, no, because that's funny because that runs around right in this period. So after Crisis, I came home. I went back to Stigmata. I came home. I quit Crisis and I said, I'm not going to be in a band for like 6 months. I just need a break. And within 2 weeks of being home, Bob called me and he was like, things aren't working out with Pete. You want to come back to the band? I'm like, yeah, sure. All right. Maybe like 6 months after that, I got contacted by the Everdark guys to do their record. So that was really like that's my only black metal record in my discography. But that's a really fucking great record. It really is. It's only 6 songs, but it's pretty brutal from start to finish.
Yeah. And you also did like the self-titled China White album in 97.
Well, no, I was a member of China White. That's number 2 in the discography. That's the next to the Stigmata. Well, go no. That way. China White, I was in. China White was one of the biggest heavy metal bands that was ever in this area, like in the early 80s. Like I'm talking like when I was, 14, 15, these guys were 18, 19 playing at big shows. It was China White and Blacksmith. So while I was playing in Stigmata, I was doing double duty in China White. So between 94 and 96, I played in both bands simultaneously. From 95 to 97, I was playing in Burning Human, China White, and Can't Say, which was like a ska punk band.
Wow. And then I kind of talking about the first.
We just lost a singer in that band like a month ago. So God rest his soul out.
Yeah. But tell me about that first Stigmata, the EP, Hymns for an Unknown God. I thought that was a great EP. And I thought it was interesting because I think there was like Dino Cazares. There's like a special thanks to Dino from Fear Factory for the original album title.
That's how long I go back with the Fear Factory guys. It's funny because Overkill was just up here maybe like a month ago. And at this point in time, it was when Dee Dee was going home and Christian was coming to fill in. So Christian and I were joking around and he's like, you still live in the same house? I go, absolutely. And he goes, are all your drums still in the basement? I go, no, it's just like, it's like my storage area now. But like, Christian and Dino came right here to this house, to my house a number of times for Stigmata practice, because when they were doing demanufacture, they were doing it right in Woodstock, which is like 50 minutes from where I live, and they were staying in Albany, which is like 20 minutes from where I live. So we hung out with those guys a lot, like especially during the downtime of recording. You know, they'd come down and hang out at practice all the time. So yes, Dino was instrumental in giving us the album title. It wasn't an EP. It was a full length. There's 8 songs on it.
Yeah.
That's still one of my favorite recordings of all time.
Yeah. And then I think the next thing was Pain Has No Boundaries, which was mostly just like live tracks and then had some studio songs. So tell me about that. How'd that whole release come to be?
Opposite corner. Wait. Right there.
Yeah.
Right where the light is shining.
Yeah.
All right. That's Pain Has No Boundaries. Great cover art on that record too. It's the cover art is this dude with his face impaled. There's a spike that's going through his chin and out his mouth. And this was in the front page of one of our local papers. Like it was sometime in the 80s, where this kid, stupid, he was trying to climb over a fence in the graveyard and he slipped, in the spike of the fence went right through his face. And this was on the front cover of newspaper.
Jeez. That's fucking brutal.
So we took that and put it on the cover of the record. Pain Has No Boundaries is just, it's a live album.
Yeah.
It's a live record that we recorded God, I think in 98, I think it was something like that.
Yeah.
99.
Yeah.
Just something we were doing. It was after. No, that was after. That was that. When the hell did we put? No, we put that. See, now this used to be like no problem for me. I'm like, oh yeah, I was blah, blah, blah. And now that we're 35 plus years later, there's 31 records behind me.
Yeah.
31. That's not all the records I've done. That's a majority of them, but there's still ones that aren't even on the wall. So for me to remember all the details on every one now is starting to get a little fuzzy. We did that as a 4-piece because it was shortly after Mike Maney quit the band and moved to New York to tattoo full time. So then we did that record. It was us and Cold as Life, great hardcore band from Detroit that used to have my buddy Mikey in it, who was in Sworn Enemy for a while. And that was recorded at the now defunct club Bogies in Albany, which is a nice place, cool little place.
Yeah.
Did that, and then shortly after that, Mike moved back, and then we did Do Unto Others.
Yeah. Yeah. Tell me about making Do Unto Others. I thought that was another good album.
It was good. Do Unto Others was a departure from Hymns for an Unknown God because it went in a more streamlined hardcore kind of sound rather than like, you know, a metal hardcore. I'm not going to use the word metalcore because that didn't exist at that point. That term did not exist yet. But Hymns for an Unknown God was definitely more metal influenced than Do Unto Others was. And that was more so because Bob wanted to streamline things a little bit, and that's the kind of stuff that Mike was writing at the time. So that's where we went with that record. I remember when we recorded it too, it was freezing out because I remember leaving the studio every night. And I was just like, oh my God, I'm sitting in my truck, just like, why didn't I just turn this thing on 20 minutes ago? And that was the first record I did as a Meinl endorser too, as a matter of fact. Now that I'm thinking about that. So we did that, and that came out on Ice Cream Records in Europe, and it came out on Victory in the States, which used to be a big hardcore label.
Yeah.
And then again, you know, we had a little bit of stuff happening over in Europe. We did some festival touring over there, and then we did a run in the summer of 2000. And, we knew after that, it's kind of run its course. So we were all ready to just call it a day.
Yeah.
So
Which then led into 2002. You joined up with Shadows Fall and you did The Art of Balance. I love this album. So how'd you end up joining Shadows Fall?
that's not really exactly how it happened, but I'll back up and fill you in. So around somewhere in the early 2001, we said Stigmata. We're like, all right, we're done. We're gonna, just tie it up at the end of the year. So every year we normally did a Black Friday show, day after Thanksgiving. So what we had said we were going to do is we're going to do one last show, Black Friday, Thanksgiving, and that's it. 2001. Around August, maybe August 2001, could have been even early September. Is late summer, early fall. I get an email from this guy Sully, who was Shadows Falls tour manager, and he reached out and he was like, "Hey, we're looking for a drummer, and a lot of people recommend you. Guys in the band know who you are. My bands had played. Stigmata had done shows with Shadows Fall. I'd known these guys already. I knew everybody in the band except for John, because I had played shows with everybody in Shadows Fall except for John in other bands in some way, shape, or form over the course of the early '90s. Brian Overcast used to play with Crisis. Overcast used to play with Burning Human. Overcast used to play with Stigmata. So I'd known Brian for a while. Push Button Warfare, Paul and Zeus's old band used to play shows with Burning Human. So, again, we have this incestuous thing between New York, Massachusetts, and Connecticut. So at the time, it was shortly. All right, no, that is the time frame. Absolutely, that's when it was, because it was shortly after my mom passed, and my mom was the world to me. I was in no way, shape, or form wanting to be in a band. I knew that Stigmata was ending, and then just dealt this blow, and my personal life was a mess with the girl I was dating at the time. So like I was just at the lowest of lows. They called me up and like, we're looking for a drummer. And I'm like, you know what? I'm leaving, the band I'm in now. I don't want to be in a van anymore. I'm done with this. I got a good job working for the state. That's where my head was. I just lost my mom. I said, I'm not interested. I appreciate it, but I'm not interested. So maybe like a month goes by, and then they hit me up again. And they go, yeah, we still can't find a drummer. Like, we thought we had a drummer, but it turns out that he's joining another band. Ironically, my very good buddy Matt Byrne from Hatebreed almost was the drummer in Shadows Fall. He
Really?
went, tried out. They were going to take him. But in the meantime, he had already tried out for Jamie or for Hatebreed, then got the call saying he was going to join Hate. They were going to take him. So again, he's like, well, I'm going to go to Hatebreed. So we're still looking for someone. So that was a month later, and I'm like, still in that funk. And they're like, well, would it hurt just to learn a couple songs and come down and jam? Okay. So early November, I learned the first 5 songs off of One Bud, went down, had a rehearsal at Zeus's. We recorded it somewhere. We still have the recording somewhere. And I never left.
Nice.
So
But
I
but
was
tell
I was technically in the band before we even played that last Stigmata show. I wasn't in the band, but I was going to be working with Shadows Fall, because I told them, look, I said, I'm doing the last show with Stigmata in a couple weeks. You guys have this tour in Europe that's coming up. It would be beneficial to get your band over there. So let me see if I can take some time off from work and I'll go do the tour with you guys. And that's where we had left it. I was going to do the tour with them in January, which was the month-long tour with Kitty. And then they were still going to keep looking. But we never made it past the bar when we left for Europe, before I said, fuck it, I'll be in the band. So I
yeah.
was I was really in the band in, November of 2001, but yeah, I was official in '02.
Yeah. But tell me about making the art of that balance. Like, what was sort of like the whole thought process being this was like your first record with Shadows Fall?
The thought process was we had I want to look at the record right now because I don't have the CD cover in front of my face like you do, fortunately, because I want to at least look at the songs and tell you and not lie to you.
Yeah, I have the back right here.
Okay, we had I got it right here.
Oh,
Stepping Outside the Circle was already written. Mystery of One Spirit was already written. Welcome to Machine was already done. That was done even before we recorded The Art of Balance, because that was done for some tribute album, some Pink Floyd tribute album, like in the interim between Derek Kurzweil playing in the band and me playing in the band. They just had some studio guy come in and they just threw it. We just threw it on The Art of Balance basically to have another track for Japan, to have a B-side. But I'm not on that because it was recorded before I was in the band. So that's it. Maybe This Is My Own too. So I think This Is My Own, Stepping and Mystery of One Spirit definitely were the first songs that were written, because those were written before I even joined the band, because they're like, hey, here's some demos that we're working on. You got to learn these two. These are going to be on the new record. But everything else, Idle Hands, This Is My Own, Thoughts, and we had the beginnings of Fire in Babylon too beforehand. Art of Balance and Idiot Box. We wrote all that stuff at John's house. The only song that there's the exception of one song, Destroyer, we actually wrote in studio. So that's the one song every time when I listen to the drum part that's on the actual album, I'm like, that's different, because it's not how I play it. And it hasn't been how I've played it live probably since 2003, because like I said, we recorded that song in the studio. Like we wrote it in the studio. So whatever I played on drums, like when we got the final take, was like, all right, let's just get from start to finish and not make any mistakes on this song that, I don't know, we just finished an hour ago. So what I'm getting at is there was no time for the parts to set in for that song, just like, oh, it's done.
yeah.
But the rest of them we took a lot of time with at John's parents' house. I remember it vividly because, it was, we got home from the kiddie tour and we had to get in the studio. Like we had most of it. So we were doing the writing in December. Like, because as soon as that Stigmata show was over, I was down in Massachusetts with those guys. So we were writing in December, February, March, and we probably recorded March or April, because I know the album came out in the fall. So it was just us 2 or 3 times a week at John's parents' house, and we would practice in like John's John's parents had a den where like his sisters like used to do aerobics and stuff, and it was like a TV room, and like we would just come in and like we'd have to move the furniture out of the way, like we'd have the drums stored in the corner of the TV room, and it's just cause chaos for like 3 hours every Tuesday and Thursday.
Yeah. Then going in,
So
yeah, but then the next album, The War Within, I love this album, and this year it does mark 20 years of The War Within. So tell me about that. Did you feel more comfortable, and did
I
you
just
contribute
finished
more to,
playing it 2 hours ago.
yeah. And but being as this has been 20 now album now 20 years old, I was like in fourth, fifth grade when this album came out. Do you have like a certain different feeling about it now as opposed to when you first put it out?
Yeah, I have a feeling I'm real fucking old after what you just said, fourth or fifth grade.
Sorry,
It's
dude.
still one of my favorite records of all time.
Yeah. Yeah, I definitely put it in there because I feel
I
like
put a
I don't
lot of work into that record, and I really do think it shows. I mean, I got some nice awards in the drumming community that year. It's still hard for me to play those songs. It's not like, they're a walk in the park. It's not the most complicated stuff in the world. I mean, kids nowadays are putting out shit that's way beyond that. But like for me as a 54, almost 55-year-old man to go out there and still play it like I'm 34, I'm still doing it.
yeah. Yeah, and it came out in '04 because I don't it's hard to describe because I feel like '04 like '05 was like a good year for like the new wave of American heavy metal scene up with like War Within was out, Oncoming Storm by Unearth was out, Volume 3 by Slipknot was out. I feel like '04 '05 was like a good year for that whole like scene.
2002 to 2007 was like the heyday period, I think.
Yeah. And one
Great,
thing I
great bands, great albums,
Yeah. And
a lot of
one
great.
thing I thought was really, really interesting with The War Within, I thought this was apparently a trivia. This is Century Media's best-selling record, according to SoundScan, selling over 200,000 copies.
Selling over 438,000 copies. Trust me, I look every year because it's the only chance I might ever get a gold record in my life because that's 500. I know it's never going to happen because to sell another 60,000 records in this day and age is fucking, that's like asking for a miracle, but whatever.
Yeah.
Still pretty impressive. Still pretty cool.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And then the next album is Threads of Life. I love this album. Like, what is it like kind of like going from this to this? It's hard to like describe it.
I'm sorry. I'm trying to formulate an answer for that one. Um, can I say pass?
Yeah. I mean, if you want.
Threads of Life is not my favorite record.
Oh, really?
Nope.
Because I remember seeing, I forget
I
what,
like half of that record and that's it.
yeah, because I'm always curious
But
because,
that record was just to I, I don't want this to be misconstrued and taken the wrong way because my feeling is not what the band feels. It's just for me, this period was just weird for me personally. Um, I just couldn't. I loved working with Nick Raskulenis. That was great. And it's got nothing to do with production or any of that. It's just for me, it was just a weird period for me where I personally felt like I was stale with my drumming. I couldn't find any real stellar. I'm not saying that like just saying after the War Within, I didn't feel like I was up to my level of what I could have done with that record. I just could never get it to where I wanted it. And it could also just be I just wasn't gravitating to these songs like I did the War Within songs.
yeah,
Um, like I said, I can go back and I can listen to it now, but we made some mistakes at that period too, like with the touring and what we did for touring. So that's why that's really, and from a business standpoint, that's why it kind of just like it doesn't bother me anymore. It just ruffles my feathers for a second and just goes, yeah, Threads of Life period. But what are you gonna do?
yeah. Because funny enough, this was the album that introduced me to you guys. I remember, I think it was the music video for Redemption I saw on like Headbangers Ball back in the day.
A lot of people say that to me, and I love that. But I think that Retribution and Fire from the Sky both blow that album away.
Yeah, yeah. Then kind of flash forward to 2009. You
Remember,
did,
remember how I just talked shit about other bands trying to make the Black Album?
yeah,
My personal opinion is I just thought that record at the time just wasn't as do I want to use the word heavy? Yes, and there you go. So
yeah. And then kind of flash forward to 2009. You did two albums that year. The first one being the first Burning Human full length album, Resurrection Through Fire. I love that album. It took a long time because you had the demo. So what took so long to finally make like the debut full length album?
I was looking to make sure that you were in proper succession, and you were. um, Burning Human. This is a great story. Burning Human, I put back together as a desire to play more drums because I was so disappointed with Threads of Life and what I did with that record and what people said about my drumming on that record. Oh, he's stale. He's not looking, no new ideas. I know, don't read the comments or whatever, but it was like that was like the height, and it was even my Modern Drummer cover, and even like it was. Anyways, so Burning Human for me was an outlet for me to just go, all right, everybody says I can't play blast beats. here we go. Let me put my old death metal band back together and show you that I can do this stuff. I just don't do it just to do it. It's not, if you don't do something drumming wise, if the music doesn't call for it. So I put Burning Human together basically to do that. So at the time, that was still good timing where, side projects with guys who were in known bands, you could get a label. So I was lucky enough to work with the people at E1, and they gave us a label, and we started getting together, and we picked apart some of our old songs, and then we wrote some new ones. And what we did to the old songs, like there's, really like a lot of them were night and day to what they were years ago, just different vocal lines, different drumming, different blah, 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 blah. But again, it was a side project. So we only had so much time in the day to, get it together. But I think it came together fairly quickly. I mean, by the time we actually started working on it, maybe like a few months. And then it was just a question of getting James Murphy up to produce when he was available.
Yeah.
I did the drums in 3 days, and then James came up from Florida and then sat with the band and did the rest of the tracking.
Yeah.
Production.
Yeah. Is there any desire to do any more Burning Human stuff or nah?
There's been a lot of desire. We had half a second record written, and just things happened where it was a lot of things. At the time, Mike and Hoops had another band called The Final Sleep here, and they were pretty active with that band. Like, they were doing a lot of shows, they were writing, and they're like, we really can't commit to this as a part-time thing because you're gone on tour all the time, and these guys want to play. So basically they just went off in their real band, which made sense. Jonah up and relocated to New Mexico. So that was part of the problem. Our singer lives in Albuquerque now. Kind of hard to write a record and play shows locally if the guy's not here anymore. And we didn't want to replace him. It was one of those things, like, if we were going to do it, we just wanted it to be the real band again. And it's funny because I have Hoops. I have an award show that's happening here a month from now that we do in Albany called the Extreme Music Awards. It's a whole local music award show where, best band, best hardcore band, best local band, blah, 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 drummer, bassist, all that shit. So It's an awards show. We give away about 25 awards. And at the end, all the awards are given away by people in the industry, like real people. Me, Gary Holt, John from Shadows Fall, and Brian from Shadows Fall. Dave Ellison's going to be there. A bunch of us. And at the end, we have an all-star jam. And now I forgot where I was going with this.
No, it's all good, man.
I totally forgot where I was going with this thought because oh shit, what were we just talking about?
You were talking about sort of that award thing, which I feel like is kind of like a metal version of the Grammys.
Yeah, for the most part, yeah. But prior to that, shit, why was I bringing that up though?
Yeah, now I kind of lost track. I was just focusing on what you were saying. Yeah, but that in the second album you did that same. Oh yeah, you're saying
Hoops from Burning Human's going to be playing with me in this show. That's what I wanted to say.
Awesome.
That's where I was going with it.
And then second album you did in 2009, you did the next Shadows Fall album, Retribution, and this year does mark 15 years of Retribution. So what was sort of like the thought process going into making this album?
Let's make a heavy as fuck record again so people think that we still have it in us.
Yeah.
That was it.
Yeah. I like that, personally, like that
Public
album. It's very underrated.
is the perfect song that describes that part of our lives.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then I also noticed you also do some session work too, because in 2011 you played drums on some songs from Marty Friedman's solo album Tokyo Jukebox 2. So how did you end up playing drums on some songs on that album?
How many songs did you say?
So you played on 6 songs?
Yes. Yes, I did.
Yeah.
Yep.
What was that like working with him?
It's great. One of the best studio experiences I've probably had.
Yeah.
He's just an amazing musician. Just insane.
Yeah.
Just shit that he comes up with just like that. Like, oh, hold on, let me just come up with a solo part to this. Where the hell's that coming from?
Yeah, he's
So
my all-time favorite guitarist.
4 days in the studio, he gave me a couple demos on these songs, and he's like, "Don't really learn them." I'm like, well, "What does that mean?" Because we're gonna change them when we get in the studio. I'm like, well, "What's the point of even having the skeleton then?" Like one, I took all this time to chart the whole thing out, and he's like, "No, we're gonna change that." I'm like, wasted like 3 hours of work right there. Um, so so it was just cool. Like we'd be in the studio, and like he'd be in the control room and just ask me to do something. He's like, "All right, like play something like Peter Criss would play." All right. Play something like Dave Lombardo would play. All right. Play something like Dave Grohl would play. Okay. And he would just take these beats because in his head, he's writing music. But I don't know what the hell he's doing. I have no clue at all. And then I'd hear like the metronome, the tempo change or something. Okay, now remember this part that I showed you before? I'm like, "Yup, go back and play that beat you were playing there." All right. So I'd record some of that, right? And then it would just be, and I'm in my head, I'm going, I have no idea what he's going to do with this. And then, you get the final product back. And as I'm listening back, I'm like, there's the Dave Grohl beat. Oh, there's this. Oh, here's where he had me do that. Oh, he looped this into, oh, I would have never thought about that. That's cool. Like, and it's interesting when I hear like my own drumming, but like when you cut and paste stuff and put it together, whatever way, if I didn't think about that in my head, I didn't play part A into part B into part C, but I played part A in the studio to a click and part B in the studio and part C with no clue on what the music was going to be to it. But then he takes all the beats, makes it one full beat, and then puts music on top of it. And it's sometimes encouraging to hear that because you go, "Oh shit, I know I played that, but I would have never thought twice to string those two sections together or whatever."
Yeah. Then going into 2012, you did the last Shadows Fall album, Fire from the Sky. I personally like this album, so tell me about making this.
We made that record with Adam D and Killswitch.
Yeah. Yeah, what was that
Yep.
like working with him?
We didn't get much done because we're always usually just ball busting and laughing at each other all the time. It's hard to get stuff done sometimes. It was good. We had a very relaxed atmosphere on that record. Very, very easy to make that record. Um, I was listening to a lot of Mastodon at the time that we did that record.
Yeah. Yeah, they're the legends.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. But yeah, it's one of my favorites. It really
Yeah.
is. I love that album. But I
Yeah.
had a lot of great shit on that record. And
Oh,
Fire
yeah,
from the Sky is still one of my favorite songs that we do.
definitely. I think it's a banger.
Thank you.
Yeah. And then going into 2013, you did joined up with Hellspeak and you did the Slaughter Rule of Agony EP. So how did you get to hook up with those guys?
Just Mark. I knew the singer Mark for a while. We had been in a project together. Mark Lopes, who is the singer in Rasta Boss and Metal Church. It was his band at the time.
Yeah. Yeah. And then kind of flash forward to 2014, you joined up with that or 20 you did a Toxic. You did only did like the Inhumanity thing. So tell me about making that and hooking up with those guys.
While Shadows Fall was out in 2013 with Hatebreed, Josh called me and asked me if I would be interested in doing a Toxic reunion. Actually, Tad called me first and he said, "Hey, Josh wants to put together Toxic again." He goes, "And I can't play that shit anymore." He goes, "So I want to know if you wanted to do it." I go, "Absolutely." So I said, "Have Josh call me." So Josh called me when when I was in Syracuse playing through with Hatebreed. I went and met up with him and Mikey. We discussed, revamping the band, and that was the plan. Like after the Shadows Fall tour wrapped up, we started jamming. Josh started coming out here, and I started going to Syracuse too. Sooner or later, Billy Bodley entered the fold on bass. It was supposed to be Brian from the original band at first, but just things didn't work out. So Billy came in on bass. Basically, what happened is we went to Europe. We did some minor touring over there. and we did make a full record. I mean, I recorded a full 10 songs. It just never saw the light of day.
You think it ever will?
Five of them, five or six of them did. They came out on the Works box set, which is right in that corner right there.
Nice. Nice. Then flash forward to 2015, you did two other albums. You're pretty much your last album with Stigmata, Conditioned to Murder. So tell me about making that album.
I'm only looking because you're wrong. Well, you're wrong in the date range because the Flotsam record came out before Stigmata record did because I was on tour with Flotsam. But
Yeah.
that's okay. During that period of time, I made the Stigmata record, I made the Flotsam self-titled, and I made another record with a band called Coconut Donut.
Yeah. Yeah, and I know you also did another session gig because in 2015 you did drums for with Kyrie Ellison with Untold Stories, The Scriptures of Sadness. Tell me about that.
Gary Ellison. That's my friend Chuck's band. Just a local band from back in the day that Suspended Animation used to play shows with, for Christ's sakes.
Yeah.
Guys that I've known for years. Yeah, I did I think I did 3 songs with them.
Yeah.
Otter did some stuff in too, which is cool.
Oh yeah. And then going in to 2016 or so, you did the self-titled Flotsam and Jetsam album. So how'd you end up joining those guys?
I had joined Flotsam in the end of 2014. Basically, when I was making that Toxic record that never saw the light of day, I was joining Flotsam. Because I remember leaving the studio and being on the phone with Kelly Smith. Because he said he was leaving. Because after they got back together, they did Ugly Noise, and then they did the No Place re-release, and he was ready to leave. So he called me and asked me if I wanted to step in because he knew that I would jump at that chance. So I did, and we toured for about a year on the No Place for what were we calling it? No Place for No Place for this. No Place for the Deceiver. Because it was a mixture of Doomsday for the Deceiver and No Place for Disgrace. Because we were only doing songs from those 2 records, which was awesome for me first joined the band because those 2 records were just, stellar. So we did that for like a year. We did a lot of that touring in Europe and the States, and then we made the self-titled, and we did some touring for that. And halfway through that tour cycle, I got the call from New Jersey, and
Yeah. Because I think before that you did another session work in 2017. You did Thanatopsis by Celestia. Tell me about that because I think they're from Greece. So how did you play drums with them?
Helios's band. I don't. It's Celestia is the
Celestia.
band. I don't even know what the hell the song name is. I don't. I have one version of it. I have one CD, and I have no idea where it is. I know the tune's pretty ripping though. Uh, that came about through my friend Elias from Memorain, who's a Greek band that Flotsam did some stuff with, and he said I did a couple songs for him for one of his records, and then he asked, I have a friend's band in Greece wants to know if you'll do a song for them too. I was like, sure.
All right. And then kind of flash forward to 2017, that year you joined up with Overkill. So how'd you get to join the band and get to know like Bobby and Dee Dee and everybody?
Remember back in the story, 1993, they watched my old band. So that's how long I've known those guys. And every year from 95 onward, I used to be close friends with Tim Mallory, who was their old drummer, Tim Malaire. And I would basically just go and hang out with those guys every time they played locally, and usually take them out to the adult entertainment bars afterwards. So I was a long time Overkill friend. Let's just put it that way. So once they were in a situation where they were going to make a change, Blitz called me one day and literally told me what was going on. And at that point, I was probably getting ready to leave Flotsam anyways. It didn't look like we had much that was going to be coming down down the pike for us at that time. So I said, let me talk to my wife and I'll give you a ring back. And then I just called back and said, yeah, let's talk next time you guys come through. And we did that. And next 7 years, there you go.
Yeah. But tell me about making The Wings of War, or I thought this was one of my favorite albums from 2019. So what was that like, being this was like your first record with Overkill?
It was what it was. We did a lot of production at Dee Dee's house for that, for like a week straight, where me and Dave came up and we just did, like 2 songs a day, just, over and over again until we hashed them out to the, where we liked it. Did the drums at our friend Joey's studio there. And that was interesting because it was just a different dynamic to record with a different band who wasn't used to the way that I record. What I mean by that is I didn't think that they were expecting me to be so quick and consistent, basically. Like, I mean, I practice for the studio. I don't waste time. I don't dick around in the studio. You're there to do a job. And it goes back to being years ago when you're recording the tape and stuff. Look, time's money. The drummer's got to do it first. If we're waiting on you, you're costing us money. So this has always been the thing that's been in the back of my head ever since 1990 or 1988 when I stepped in the recording studio for the first time. So it's always go in, be prepared, get the job done. So I'm used to doing, 4 or 5 songs the first day, no problem. Like, let's go. And Dee Dee's like, no, we're not going to do that much. I'm like, why not? I'm in the zone. Let's go. I'm ready. Let's do this. No, we're just going to do like 3 a day. I'm like, all right. So that's what we did. So again, it's working with different people. You're going to do it the way, that they're used to doing it. So that's what we did. We took 3 songs a day and just concentrated on those. And then once those were done, next day we'd do 3 other ones, sit on those overnight. I go back to the hotel, listen to it. Am I good with everything I did? Yep, that's cool. And that was that. There were some good songs on that one. I don't think that I was really in my comfort zone for myself on that album. The Flotsam album, I'm totally comfortable in myself. That one, I don't think I was, because
Yeah.
it was writing within someone else's box and someone else's restrictions. There were still things that I was told, do here, don't do here, or don't do this here, or whatever. With Scorched, I definitely feel that I had a lot more liberties with that record. And I was able to basically kind of like really kind of be myself on that one. Yeah.
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 Yeah. And I thought this was one of my favorite albums from last year.
Thank
And
you.
I was lucky I got to see you play live one last time with them on that tour you did with Exhorder.
Thank you.
Oh yeah. But then of course this year you
A lot of good
pretty much,
songs on that one.
yeah. Yeah, I love like Scorched, Going Home, Surgeon, like all these songs are bangers.
Going Home, huh? That wasn't what I expected to be shouted out.
Yeah. But definitely. But then of course this year you had announced that you had left Overkill. So how hard was it to leave the band?
It wasn't. I don't look, this is the part of the interview where I don't want to talk a lot about why I left Overkill. And I'm going to tell you why. I just went through this with someone else in another interview, and I said, this is going to be all over Blabbermouth the next day. And sure as shit, it was. Okay. This is
Oh
what I'm
wow.
going to tell you. If someone is happy in a band, they don't leave it. If someone's happy in a band, they don't leave it. I got to a point where I was no longer happy with my situation, and I hadn't been for a long time. This didn't happen overnight. It wasn't just like one day, oh, Shadows Falls got a show, so I'm just going to quit. No, this was compounded over a good two-year period where I had. So you're asking how hard was it to quit? It was hard because this thought had been going through my head for a long time. Like, I'm just I feel like I'm just being kind of sort of like, no, I'm not being paid what I'm worth here. Like, what's the, how long am I going to let myself do this to myself? That's really what it was. And it was nice to be in a position playing those shows and being there. But once other things started opening back up for me and other things were coming more into the horizon, it made it more, it kind of like, there's the light at the end of the tunnel. Let's go. Just, shit or get off the pot. So and it was starting to actually affect me physically too. So I was like, it was just a situation I wanted to get out of. It wasn't anything personally. I'm friends with all those guys. I just told you, I went to see them a month ago. I got hugged by everybody in the band. Dee Dee was there too. There's no issues. Like, we're all still friends. They've got a great drummer. I picked them out. Just call Jeremy. He's perfect for the
Yeah,
gig.
I've interviewed him before.
I didn't leave him hanging for any tour. I went through my commitments and said, look, I'm going to stay till here. We're going to work with him, and then I'm going to move on.
Yeah. Then moving on to this past July, you did like two albums that were funny enough released on the same day. You did
Same day.
helped, yeah, the
Yep.
same day you did helped with with drums on Dee Dee's album, Dreadful Company. So what was that like playing on that album?
The best part about Dee Dee's solo album is I play on a song with Charlie Benante playing guitar.
Yeah, because I
Me
know
and
he's a
one of
guitar
my
player
drumming
too.
heroes playing guitar.
Yeah, not a lot of people know that he plays guitar too.
Most diehard Anthrax fans know.
Yeah,
He writes most of the songs, so I think a
definitely.
lot of people know he does play guitar. But
Yeah.
anyway,
And then, of course, you did the second, another album. You started up with a new band, Category 7, with, of course, so Jack Gibson from Exodus, Phil Demmel, formerly of Machine Head, Mike Orlando, formerly of Adrenaline Mob, John Bush of Armored Saint, and formerly of Anthrax. So, how'd the idea come to be to make that kind of super group?
oh, I'm just going to give you the quick story because I'm starting to get winded here. We all went drinking one night. We said, hey, should we form a band? Yeah, that sounds like a good idea. That's what me, Mike, and Phil said. So a couple days later, after the hangover wore off, we texted each other. Were we serious the other night, or like were we just, drunk talk? No, I'm serious. Let's do this. This happened to be at a time when Phil was out filling in Overkill. And this was during a period of time where I was at my low of lows of just not wanting to be there, let's say. Writing, I have a say in this. I just didn't want to be told what was going on anymore. Okay. So that was one of the catalysts. I wanted to be, in charge of my own ship. So that was the idea behind Category 7. We had a
Yeah.
few singers that we had in mind. John was our first choice, and we were praying he would say yes. He said yes. We had a few bass players on the list. Jack happened to be number one on the list, and Jack said yes too. So it was very easy for. So then that turned into writing songs. And are we charging? I hope so.
Yeah. Yeah, because I've heard the album is absolutely kick-ass.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Too bad our
Yeah.
tour just got canceled.
Yeah, and I was really looking forward to that because you were going to be in Atlanta on my birthday, and I thought that would have been a best birthday gift.
I'm more disappointed than you are, I guarantee it.
Yeah, yeah, but
I want to thank you for being one of the few who bought tickets. It's
uh,
right now, this is the worst. It's just the worst time to be a brand new band. I mean, we didn't want to have to go out and try to headline. It's hard to find a support tour. And it's just right now, it's a scheduling nightmare between four of us really in working bands. Mike is the only guy that doesn't have another band touring right now. And it's like, and I'm partially to blame too, because there's things happening with Shadows Fall that have changed the Category 7 plan. But like, we knew when we started this that there's going to be juggling, and we're going to know that, it's people's real bands are always still going to take precedence.
yeah, but with playing with all these bands, like how different of a mind frame is it with each band? Are you allowed to like bring in like free reign with any band that you've been a part of, or do you have to have like a certain mind frame depending on the project?
don't think so. I mean, you just got to be able to get along with people. I mean, my attitude doesn't, my mindset really doesn't change on who I'm playing with. It's like I want to be there. I want to try to be cool to the people I'm playing with, support the music, and still have fun doing it and not step on anybody's toes. That's my plan. I want to go to band practice and have fun. I want to go on tour and have fun. I don't want it to be a freaking, I hate being out there. It's hard enough being out on tour as it is, being away from my family and not being here. You don't want to be miserable when you're out there
Yeah.
because it trickles down into your day too. I mean, it happens with me tons of times over the course of time. It's happened with me being on the other end of it too. You meet someone and they're in a shitty mood and you think they're a dick, but you just met them on a bad day.
Yeah.
Sorry, I was just having a bad, you know,
Definitely.
caught me at a shitty time. Like, for example, here's a case in point story from yesterday. I ran into a friend, well, a guy I went to school with, I ran into the other day at the supermarket. And it was literally the morning that the Category 7 tour got canceled. So I was in a shitty mood as far as like my career. It's like, oh, great. I just lost work. Awesome. And I run into this guy in a grocery store. And he's like, oh, the whole thing was like, oh, congratulations on all your success. I watch your videos and show my daughter. I follow you all the time. And I'm just like, yeah, whatever. I mean, it wasn't like that, but I was just like, yeah, thanks. I should have been, yeah, thanks. I really appreciate blah, blah, blah. But it just caught me at that moment where I couldn't have been so much more in a funk because of what was going on that I'm like, oh, really? My career is great. Yeah, my tours got canceled today. That's how great it is. I should have just said that, because that's what I was thinking. But again, so what it made me do was it made me send him a Facebook message like an hour later. Chris, I'm like, I'm sorry, I wasn't really like receptive to like that. Said, I just had some really shitty business news this morning. So when you brought up the business, I just wasn't really, didn't want to really talk about it. So, but my point was that I went out of my way to let him know, sorry, yeah, you're right. I should be thankful for all this, but
Definitely. And of course, the last thing I want to talk about is, of course, you recently released the first new Shadows Fall song in over 12 years, In the Gray, which I have heard and is absolutely kick ass. Is that like something that will be on a new Shadows Fall album, or is this kind of like a one-off kind of thing?
it will be released on something next year for sure.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. And of course, like a few years ago, like the band
I mean, it's released on its own, but it will be on something next year.
Yeah, because I know like a few years ago, like Shadows Fall reunited. So what made you guys kind of got back together? Because I know you kind of went on like a little hiatus.
A lot of things. A lot of things made us get back together. The love of wanting to play our music again. That's really what it was.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And I was lucky I got to catch one of y'all's reunion shows, like because a couple years ago I saw you at the Furnace Fest in Birmingham, Alabama, and that was my first time ever seeing Shadows Fall. And since I've been listening to you guys since high school.
Thank you.
Oh yeah.
Hopefully it was not disappointing.
It was I was really blown away. Like you guys kicked serious ass.
Okay.
Yes, and then kind of also like in the end to sort of wrap things up. What's next for of course with Shadows Fall or Category 7 or any of your other bands if you're in terms of like tours and stuff. I know the Category 7 tour got canceled, but with Shadows Fall, what's next for you in the pipeline if you're allowed to say?
There's some things I'm allowed to say. There's sadly some things I'm not allowed to say. Um, for both bands. As far as Shadows Fall goes, we have our 20th anniversary War Within show happening next Saturday night, December 21st at the Palladium in Worcester, Massachusetts. So that's our last big hurrah for the year. And next year, like I said, we will be releasing something. Next year, we will also be going out at some point. I can't give any more. I can't give any more information on that, but we will be making some. We will be on the road next year in some capacity.
Yeah, I'll keep my eyes peeled.
Category 7, sadly, yes, had to cancel the US tour, but we do have some other stuff that is definitely happening, will be happening, and that will be announced very soon as well.
Yeah.
I can't say it because it's not totally solidified yet, so I don't want to jinx it, especially after what just happened with the tour. So that's what's going on with that. And then I have the Bubba Bash, which is the Neil Peart tribute show happening on the 4th of January in Pennsylvania. And then the Extreme Music Awards on the 11th next year. And that's it for now.
Yes. So thank you, Jason. It was so great to be able to talk with you today. Is just any final words you want to say to the viewers that are watching this to close this out?
Thanks for listening, watching, and still caring.
Hell yeah. So everybody, Jason Bittner, we'll see you next time.